Before listening, please like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for us. Thank you. Part 1. I noticed it the morning she came home late. Not just a few minutes late, not because of traffic or errands. This was deliberate. The car was parked crooked in the driveway, engine still warm, and a faint trace of someone else's cologne lingered in the air. She stepped out smiling, casual, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. I pretended not to notice. I always pretended. For years, I'd been pretending. Calm, observant, patient. I told myself I could read her moods, anticipate her actions. But that morning, something broke. A sliver of the routine that had kept me blind. "Hi," she said, voice light, almost careless. She tossed her bag on the couch and headed to the kitchen. "Coffee?" "Yes," I replied, neutral. Too neutral. I didn't want her to see the storm behind my eyes. She hummed, opening the fridge. "You worked late again?" "I left on time," I said, watching her, every movement a clue, the tilt of her head, the way she avoided certain areas of the kitchen, the slight tremor in her hands while pouring milk. Too precise, too careful, not casual. Never mind," she said, pausing mid-motion. "Nothing." She forced a laugh. I knew better. I always did. Later that night, the first letter appeared. Not a letter in the post, not a casual note. This one was folded carefully, edges sharp, handwriting deliberate but unfamiliar. The words were polite, insistent, impatient under the surface. Someone had been here, someone she thought I wouldn't notice. I didn't open it immediately. I held it, felt the weight, the ink, faint perfume clinging to the paper. I memorized it, every word, every nuance. The next morning, she poured her coffee. I sat silently, pretending ignorance, pretending I didn't know. "You've been quiet," she said, stirring sugar into her cup. Her eyes searched mine, sharp, trying to detect the calm I worked so hard to maintain. "I've been listening," I said. "To what?" "To everything." Her lips pressed together. She didn't speak. She never did when confronted by the truth. She simply walked away. Silence stretched across the kitchen, suffocating and unbroken. The following week began like any other, yet the air between us was charged with something unspoken. She moved with practiced grace, but I could see the shadows behind her smiles. Every laugh, every tilt of her head, every glance at the window or the hallway told a story. I had become the silent observer, cataloging details with meticulous care. At work, she seemed perfectly composed. Meeting after meeting, email after email, phone calls whispered just below audibility. I wasn't present physically, but my mind traced each interaction. I reconstructed every moment, imagining what she said, how she said it, and to whom. Her lunch with colleagues was brief. I watched through the reflection of a passing car as she laughed, leaned close to someone I did not yet recognize, and then glanced at her phone, typing something quickly. I noted the slight quiver in her fingers, the faint reddening of her cheeks, the subtle shift in her posture. Back at home, she tried to act normal. She asked me about my day with casual curiosity, but her tone carried a subtle edge, a tremor of unease. I answered calmly, observing, letting her believe the room was safe, that nothing was noticed. But the game had begun. The letters continued. Each day a new one arrived. Polite words, carefully chosen phrases, impatient undertones. Whoever had written them thought they were discreet, subtle. But I read every nuance, memorized the cadence, the punctuation, the pressure of the pen. Each note became a breadcrumb trail leading to the truth. One evening, she left one on the counter while pretending to tidy up. I picked it up later, reading the carefully folded message, feeling the faint scent of perfume that was not hers. My pulse remained calm, my mind racing with the possibilities. I knew the sender's identity, even without a name. Patterns, habits, subtle cues all pointed toward him. And she was too blinded by her secret to notice how thoroughly she had exposed herself. That night, I confronted her indirectly. "You've been distracted lately," I said over dinner, voice calm, measured. She laughed nervously. "Distracted? Me? I'm perfectly fine." "Perfectly fine," I echoed, studying the tremor in her hand as she reached for her glass, the slight hesitation before she placed it back down. "Everything seems fine until you miss the small details." She frowned, unsure whether I was joking or serious. The doubt that flickered across her face was the first real crack I had seen in weeks. Work continued to provide insight. I made a habit of visiting her office under casual pretenses. A forgotten report, a brief chat with HR, small reasons to be near enough to observe without suspicion. I noticed her meeting a man in the lobby once, the kind of casual interaction that held too much intimacy to be professional. She tried to conceal it, adjusted her bag, changed her posture, but the evidence was clear. Later, she claimed it was a client. A misunderstanding, she said. But I had already mapped his presence in her life, piecing together times, places, and signals. She was playing a dangerous game, and she didn't even realize it. Internal monologue. She believes she can hide, that subtle touches and secret meetings will remain invisible, but nothing escapes the patient observer. Each interaction, each hesitation, each carefully concealed gesture is a confession. I don't need to act yet. I only need to watch. The pieces are falling into place. At home, I began testing her subtly, planting clues, nudges, small psychological traps. A message left on her pillow, a casual mention of someone else's name, a comment about loyalty and trust, just enough to unsettle. Her reactions were small at first, a flicker of the eyes, a tightness in her jaw, the pause before she answered, but they were enough. One evening, she tried to laugh it off. "You're acting strange," she said, "like you know something you shouldn't." "I know what matters," I replied. Her hand lingered on mine for a fraction of a second, then dropped. Her smile was forced, her composure strained. The cracks were appearing faster now. The game was progressing, and she had no idea she was a step behind. At the office, she continued to interact with him, the man I had identified. Their meetings were brief, almost casual, yet laden with intention. I observed from a distance, noting every glance, every hesitation, every micro-expression. I cataloged them meticulously. Later, when she returned home, I asked casually, "Did you meet anyone interesting today?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "No, just work," she replied too quickly. "Just work," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Her pause was the answer I had been waiting for. She couldn't maintain the lie. Every twitch, every hesitation, every glance betrayed her. Internal monologue. Control is silent. Observation is invisible. I am neither angry nor reactive. I am patient. I am methodical. She believes she has power, but she is exposing herself with every careless gesture. Every whispered word, every fleeting touch, I see it all. I wait for the moment when her mistakes align perfectly with opportunity. The psychological tension escalated. She began noticing small differences in my behavior, my attentiveness, the way I lingered just a moment longer in a room, my casual comments about loyalty or honesty. Each small remark was a probe, a test of her composure. I let her react, studied the reaction, logged it in memory. One evening, I planted a subtle trap. A message appeared on the kitchen counter, unsigned, seemingly casual. I watched her discover it. The moment her eyes flicked, her lips pressed tight. She read it twice, then glanced at me as if to test whether I had seen it. I did, and I waited. She dropped it casually, pretending disinterest, but I could feel her tension radiating. That was the point. The awareness that she had slipped, that she was no longer fully in control. Conversations became a delicate dance. "You seem different," she said one night, her voice low, almost accusatory. "I am observant," I replied, "disciplined, methodical." Her eyes darted around, looking for signs of anger, fear, anything. There was none, only calm, only patience, only observation. She sighed, trying to regain composure. "I feel like you're always watching," she said. "Perhaps," I replied softly, "but only the things that matter." Her breath caught slightly. That subtle reaction, too small for anyone else to notice, was my victory. She had begun to understand the stakes. The psychological battle was in motion, and she was already off balance. At work, I continued to monitor her patterns, noting the arrival of messages, the timing of calls, subtle gestures she made during meetings. I reconstructed her day in my mind, creating a mental map of interactions, locations, and intentions. Each observation was a thread leading to a tapestry of truth she had been trying desperately to conceal. Back at home, the tension was palpable. She laughed, she joked, she tried to act casual, but the cracks showed in fleeting moments. A hesitation before speaking, a flicker in her gaze, a tremor in her hand. Each moment confirmed my suspicions, and I catalogued them all with precision. Internal monologue. She thinks she is clever, hiding in plain sight. But cleverness is nothing against method. Observation reveals everything. Her tiny slips, her subtle gestures, her small lies, they all add up. I am patient. I wait. And when the time comes, the truth will unfold perfectly, like a story she cannot rewrite. Evenings became rehearsals of normalcy. She suggested movies, casual conversations, even humor. I responded minimally, letting her believe the night was safe, that she had regained composure. But I observed everything: the tilt of her head, the direction of her gaze, the slight hesitation before she answered. Each subtle sign reinforced the web of evidence I was building. The letters continued, arriving more frequently, each carefully crafted, each revealing more than she intended. I read them all, memorizing each word, each nuance, each implied message. They became the script of her hidden life, the road map of her deception. And through it all, I remained calm, patient, invisible, the observer, the strategist, the silent force in the room that would, in time, reveal everything. The first part of the game was complete. Observation, patience, and control had shifted the balance. She was unaware that she was no longer in charge, that every gesture, every whispered word, every fleeting touch had been recorded, catalogued, and analyzed, and I would wait until the perfect moment to act. The following morning, She left for work as usual, carrying herself with practiced ease. But I noticed the slight hesitation in her step, the way she lingered by the door a fraction longer than necessary. She glanced back once, her eyes darting toward the window where I had been observing her for years. She thought I didn't notice. She always thought that. At her office, she moved among colleagues, laughing lightly at jokes, typing emails with precision, attending meetings with a controlled smile. But subtle signals betrayed her. A fleeting touch on a colleague's arm, a smile too long, a pause too short, a glance toward her phone that lasted an instant longer than casual. Every micro movement told me she was hiding something, and someone. Lunch was no longer casual. She chose a table near the window, seating herself at an angle that allowed her to see anyone approaching. Her phone buzzed quietly. She picked it up, typed quickly, paused, deleted, and typed again. I imagined the conversation, words carefully chosen, hidden meanings embedded, a dance of secrecy. Later, she returned home, smiling faintly, carrying the veneer of composure like armor. I sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through emails, pretending ignorance, pretending I hadn't traced every movement, every text, every hidden gesture. "You're quiet tonight," she said, setting down her bag and arranging the cushions. "I've been observing," I said simply. Her eyebrows rose. "Observing?" "Yes," I replied, "observing what is." She smiled nervously, but there was a flicker of unease behind her eyes. She had started noticing subtly that I saw more than she realized, and that knowledge made her twitch, reconsider her actions, second-guess every movement. At the office, the letters began to change, more frequent, more deliberate, more audacious. Each one carried a subtle pressure, a hint of impatience, an underlying confidence that she could manipulate situations. But she underestimated me. I memorized every phrase, every word choice, every punctuation mark. Patterns emerged. The sender was predictable, though she thought invisible. One day, I caught her alone in the lobby, speaking quietly to a man whose face I had not yet fully seen. I watched from a distance, noting posture, tone, hesitation, and subtle smiles. She was careful, but not careful enough. Each gesture left a trail, and I followed it, patient, silent, unflinching. Internal monologue. Every word, every gesture, every tiny infraction is recorded in my mind. She believes she is clever. She believes she is unseen. But each move is predictable. Each choice is a confession in disguise. Observation is power. Patience is weapon, and the moment of revelation approaches. That evening, she attempted casual conversation over dinner. "You're different," she said, voice low, testing. "I am patient," I said. "I am methodical. I see what matters." Her fork trembled slightly. She tried to hide it, adjusting her hand as if the motion were accidental. But I'd noticed. I catalogued it mentally, storing every small sign, every micro-expression for later reference. She laughed, trying to mask discomfort. "You're intense." "I am precise," I replied. "Intentional." The cracks in her armor were growing. She had begun to understand subconsciously that her actions no longer went unnoticed. That tiny flicker of guilt or hesitation she tried to erase was already etched into my mind, adding another thread to the web of understanding I had spun. The following week brought another subtle escalation. I began leaving indirect messages, casual remarks designed to unsettle. I mentioned loyalty, honesty, trust, and observation casually in conversation. Sometimes I left notes where she would find them, a folded piece of paper on her pillow, a book slightly misaligned on the shelf, a pen left with ink facing up. These small actions were invisible to her consciously, but were noticed subconsciously, triggering unease. One evening, she confronted me. "You're too aware of everything," she said, tone trembling slightly. "I notice what matters," I replied. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, where shadows seemed longer than usual. She adjusted her posture, trying to regain composure. Each subtle act of concealment only confirmed my observations. At work, she continued to meet the man. They spoke in whispers, glanced at each other with fleeting familiarity, laughed lightly, as if rehearsing normalcy. I traced each encounter, noting timing, duration, and behavior. I reconstructed the moments in my mind as if watching a film, every frame recorded, every line memorized. Later, I casually asked her, "Did you meet anyone interesting today?" "No," she replied too quickly. "Just work?" I repeated. Her pause was my confirmation. She could not sustain the lie. Every hesitation, every shift of expression was recorded, analyzed, catalogued. Internal monologue. Control is silent. Observation is invisible. I am not angry. I am not reactive. I am patient, disciplined, methodical. She thinks she has the upper hand, but she is revealing everything. Every gesture, every whispered word, every glance is my evidence. I wait for the alignment of truth and opportunity. I wait for the perfect moment. As days passed, I noticed subtle changes in her behavior. She began to double-check messages, hide screens, adjust her posture, alter her tone. Little cracks in the performance appeared, a laugh that lingered too long, a glance that lasted a fraction longer than casual, a hesitation before responding. Each small slip added to my understanding. One evening, she tried humor. "You're like a hawk," she said, "watching everything, noticing everything." "Yes," I said, "but only what matters." Her hand brushed against mine briefly. She pulled away quickly, uncomfortable. The psychological pressure was mounting. She knew on some level that she could not fully hide, and I could feel it. The subtle fear, the tension, the hesitation, the anxiety she tried to mask. I began leaving more pointed cues. A note left on the kitchen counter, a message under a coffee cup, a casual mention of loyalty or fidelity. Her reactions were subtle at first, micro-expressions that anyone else might miss. But I noticed everything. Each twitch, each shift, each pause, each breath was a confession. Internal monologue. She underestimates the power of observation. Each gesture, each word, each flicker of hesitation is a truth she cannot hide. Patience is the tool. Silence is the weapon. And I will wait until the culmination of all evidence aligns with opportunity. She will see, finally, that nothing was invisible, nothing escaped. The game is mine. Evenings at home were rehearsals of normalcy. She suggested movies, small talk, humor. I played along, letting her believe the night was safe. But I observed everything: the tilt of her head, the direction of her gaze, the subtle trembling of fingers. Each small detail reinforced the psychological advantage I held. The letters continued, arriving more frequently, each carefully constructed, each more revealing than the last. I read them all, memorized them, analyzed the implications. The sender was bold but predictable. I was calm, patient, invisible. The game was approaching a critical point. She tried casual conversations over dinner. "You're different tonight," she said. I am observant, I replied, disciplined, methodical. Her eyes flicked to the hallway, then back. She searched my expression, looking for anger, for a crack, for emotion. There was none. Only observation, only patience, only methodical strategy. Her smile faltered. She laughed softly, nervously. Each small reaction was recorded, stored, a part of the web I had spun. At night, she left messages on the counter, notes folded under books, emails sent in secrecy. I traced each one mentally, reconstructing the network of deception she thought was invisible. The first phase of the confrontation was complete. Observation, patience, and psychological pressure had shifted the balance. She did not realize she was no longer in control. Every gesture, every whispered word, every small infraction was recorded, analyzed, and memorized, and I would wait for the perfect alignment of opportunity and revelation. The air in the house felt heavier that evening, charged with unspoken tension. She moved around the kitchen with calculated ease, placing dishes, adjusting napkins, all while pretending the day had been ordinary. But the cracks were visible. The way her eyes flicked toward the hallway, the slight trembling in her fingers, the nervous tilt of her head, it all betrayed her. I watched silently, sitting at the dining table, a glass of wine in hand, letting her perform her carefully constructed act. "You seem distant tonight," she said, voice cautious. "I've been observing," I said, "and noticing." Her hand froze mid-motion. She swallowed. "Noticing what?" "Everything," I replied softly. "Every detail, every slip, every gesture you thought unnoticed." Her eyes widened slightly, but she forced a casual laugh. "You're intense," she said, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. "Yes," I replied, calm. "Observant, disciplined, methodical." She looked down at the counter, fidgeting with a knife, and for a moment the act slipped. A flicker of guilt, a flash of fear, a pause too long before answering. That was all I needed. Work had become a stage for observation. She continued to meet the man, carefully hidden behind polite explanations and casual excuses. I traced their patterns mentally, times of arrival, departures, pauses in hallways, whispered words exchanged. Each interaction left a trail, each trail another piece of the puzzle. One day, I followed her under the guise of running an errand nearby. From a discreet distance, I watched her meet him outside a cafe. The way she leaned toward him, the brush of her hand against his arm, the soft laugh she tried to mask, it was all evidence. I recorded it mentally, memorized every word I could hear, every gesture, every subtle movement. Later that night, she tried to distract me. "I ran into someone from work today," she said casually over dinner. "Nothing important." "Really?" I asked. "Just nothing?" Her eyes flicked briefly toward the window. "Yes, nothing." But I knew. I always knew. Internal monologue. Every glance, every touch, every whispered word, she cannot hide from the patient observer. Control is invisible, yet complete. She believes she has power, but she is exposing herself. Each misstep, each hesitation, each carefully concealed gesture is mine to interpret, catalog, and remember. Patience will serve as the final weapon, silence as the greatest advantage, and I will wait for the perfect moment. The letters had become more frequent, more daring. Polite words carrying impatience, subtle threats disguised as casual conversation. Whoever wrote them believed themselves discreet, but patterns emerged. Each phrase, each punctuation mark, Each underlined word was a clue. I memorized them all, creating a mental map of her deception, the invisible network she thought she controlled. At home, the tension grew. Small tests became routine. A note left on the pillow, a casual mention of fidelity in conversation, indirect comments about loyalty and honesty, designed to unsettle her, to provoke micro-reactions. She began to notice subtly that I saw more than she wanted me to. The nervous tremors, the flickers of eye contact, the short pauses before answering, all confirmed my observations. One evening, she confronted me directly. "You notice everything," she said, voice low, edged with fear. "I notice what matters," I replied. Her lips pressed together. She looked away, searching for a way to regain composure. Each gesture she made, each small act of concealment, only confirmed my awareness. The web was complete. She was already caught in it. At work, I began mapping the patterns with precision. Meetings, emails, phone calls, fleeting encounters in the hallway. Every detail mattered. I noticed the slight hesitation before she answered texts, the way she adjusted her hair before picking up a phone call, the tiny shifts in posture when she spoke with him. Each anomaly reinforced my understanding. Later that night, I placed a subtle psychological trap. I mentioned a casual event at a colleague's house, watched her reaction as if reading a novel. Her face changed in a fraction of a second, the act slipping again. She realized I was aware, but she did not know how much I knew. Internal monologue. The alignment of evidence and opportunity is near. She cannot hide, cannot control the narrative anymore. Each gesture, each hesitation, each micro-expression is a confirmation of her guilt. Patience has brought the pieces together. Observation has revealed a hidden truth, and the moment of exposure will come without warning, precise, inevitable, undeniable. Back at home, she tried casual conversation, laughter, distractions, even humor. I indulged her just enough to maintain the illusion of normalcy. But every movement, every glance, every sigh was cataloged, analyzed, and stored. The web of truth was complete, waiting for the perfect point of culmination. One evening, a letter slipped from her purse onto the floor. I picked it up silently, recognizing the handwriting immediately. Her heart raced as she realized I held it, but I did not speak. I only observed. The moment was mine, the revelation inevitable. She realized she could no longer hide. The psychological pressure mounted visibly. Each small slip, each gesture, each word carried weight. The game was entering its final stages. I began planning the final moves. Small manipulations, carefully timed remarks, planted observations, all designed to bring her to the edge of exposure. I was patient, methodical, calm. The letters, the meetings, the gestures, all pieces of a story she would not control. Her laughter at dinner grew tense, forced. Her smiles, carefully timed, were no longer convincing. Each interaction, each comment, each glance confirmed that she understood she was losing control. The web was closing. Internal monologue. She will see the truth when the time is right. Every piece of evidence, every slip, every hidden detail is cataloged. I am ready, patient, methodical, disciplined. Observation is my weapon, patience my shield. And when the culmination arrives, it will be perfect, complete, undeniable. She has been observed. She has been tested. She has been caught, and she will not escape the consequences of her own deception. By now, the tension had become unbearable for her. Each day she moved through a minefield of psychological traps I had set. Every glance, every gesture, every whispered word was observed, measured, interpreted. The freedom she had taken for granted was gone. Every choice now carried risk. Every movement revealed more than she realized. The letters increased in frequency, each one more daring than the last. I read each carefully, analyzing every phrase, every subtle clue, every implied meaning. The web of deceit was visible only to me. She could not hide from the patient, observant eye that recorded everything. Evenings at home were exercises in controlled tension. She suggested casual movies, light conversation, even humor. I indulged, maintaining the illusion of normalcy. But every gesture, every micro-expression, every hesitation was observed, stored, and analyzed. The moment of final confrontation drew nearer. The first true confrontation loomed. Subtle manipulations had revealed cracks. Psychological pressure had induced hesitation. The letters and secret meetings had provided clarity. The stage was set. All that remained was the alignment of opportunity, the perfect moment when the truth would emerge, undeniable, precise, and complete. The shift did not happen suddenly. It was not marked by a dramatic confrontation or a raised voice. It came quietly, almost invisibly, the way control always does when it changes hands. She sensed it before she understood it. That morning, she stood in the doorway longer than usual. Her hand rested on the frame, fingers pressing lightly as if grounding herself. She looked at me as though she expected something: anger, suspicion, accusation. She found none. I was calm, focused, unreadable. "Are you coming home late tonight?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "Depends." "On what?" "On how the day unfolds." She nodded, pretending the answer made sense. It didn't, and that uncertainty followed her out the door like a shadow. At work, she tried to regain rhythm, emails, meetings, polite conversations. But she was distracted. She checked her phone more often, typed messages only to erase them, stared too long at her screen without reading. He noticed. The man had grown impatient. He had always been confident, careless even. He believed secrecy was excitement, that danger sharpened desire. But now something felt wrong. She was less responsive, more cautious, afraid. During lunch, he leaned closer than usual. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Fine," she said too quickly. "You don't look fine." She forced a smile. "Just tired." He studied her. "Did he say something?" "No." "Did he suspect anything?" She hesitated. That was enough. "You said he was oblivious," he said, irritation creeping into his voice. "You said he never notices." She lowered her gaze. "He notices more than I thought." That was the first crack, not between us, but between them. Back at home that evening, I rearranged nothing. I changed nothing. And yet the atmosphere had shifted completely. She moved carefully, as if the house itself might react to her steps. She spoke less. When she did speak, she watched my face closely, searching for cues. I gave her none. At dinner, she finally broke. "You're being different," she said. "Yes." "That's not an answer." "It is." She exhaled slowly. "You don't ask questions anymore." "I don't need to." Her fingers tightened around her fork. "That doesn't make me feel better." "It's not meant to." Silence stretched between us, heavy, intentional. That night, I didn't touch her, not out of anger, out of precision. Desire withheld is louder than desire denied. She lay awake beside me, shifting slightly, breathing shallowly. I could feel her awareness pressing against my back. She whispered my name once. I did not turn. The next phase had begun. At work, I made my presence known, not directly, but unmistakably. A casual visit, a conversation with her supervisor, a brief stop near her department. Nothing inappropriate, nothing suspicious, but visible. She saw me before I saw her. I felt it. Her posture stiffened, her smile faltered, her eyes followed me even when she pretended they didn't. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. "Why is he here?" the message read. "I don't know," she typed back. "He's watching." "No, he's not." "You're lying." She deleted her reply twice before sending, "You're paranoid." But paranoia only exists when control is slipping. That evening, another letter arrived. This one was different, shorter, sharper. It wasn't addressed to her, it was addressed to me. No accusations, no confessions, just implication. I read it once, then again. Then I folded it neatly and placed it inside a book on the shelf. Somewhere she would never look. Evidence doesn't need to be displayed to be powerful. It only needs to exist. Over the following days, I began subtle redirection. I asked about her schedule, casually, calmly. "Are you working late tomorrow?" "Yes." "Which project?" She answered too quickly, named the wrong one. I nodded, filed it away. Later, I mentioned the project in passing to someone else, loud enough for her to hear. Her eyes widened for half a second. She said nothing. That night, she confronted me. "I feel like you're testing me," she said. "I am." Her voice dropped. "Why?" "To see what breaks." She stared at me, fear flickering openly now. "And if something does?" "Then it wasn't stable to begin with." She didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. But only one of us was exhausted by morning. The man grew reckless. He wanted reassurance, meetings, certainty. She tried to delay him. Excuses, postponements. "You said you loved me," he said during one tense call. "I do," she replied. "Then why does it feel like you're disappearing?" She closed her eyes. "Because everything is changing." "Then choose," he said. She didn't answer. That silence was fatal. I noticed a shift immediately. She became reactive, defensive, sloppy. She forgot her phone one morning. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The screen lit up on its own. I memorized the name, the tone, the urgency. I placed the phone exactly where it had been. Later that evening, I asked calmly, "Did you forget something this morning?" She froze, then forced a laugh. "My keys." "No," I said, "something more important." She stared at me, heart racing. "What are you talking about?" I smiled faintly. "If you don't know, then we're already past the point of explanation." That night, she cried silently in the bathroom. I let her. Control does not rush comfort. The following week, I made my move, not against her, but around her. I scheduled a small gathering, nothing formal, just people, familiar faces, comfortable setting. She didn't understand why until it was too late. Her colleagues, mutual friends, a carefully chosen audience, and him. He arrived late, confident, unaware. When their eyes met across the room, I watched understanding strike like ice. He looked at me, really looked, and in that moment, he knew. I raised my glass, not to confrontation, to clarity. The room buzzed with conversation, laughter, normalcy, and beneath it all, tension coiled tight. I leaned toward her and spoke quietly. "You should enjoy tonight," I said. "It's the last time things will feel uncertain." Her voice trembled. "What are you doing?" "Finishing what you started." Her breath caught, The game was no longer psychological. It was inevitable. And everyone in that room was already part of it. The morning was quiet, almost deceptive. Sunlight poured through the blinds, casting lines across the living room. She moved around the house as if nothing had changed, but every step, every glance betrayed hesitation. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Another message from him, the same man she had been meeting secretly. I watched her pick it up, hands trembling slightly. She opened it, read it, and for a moment froze. I didn't need to ask. The message alone was enough to reveal the pattern, the impatience, the implied expectations, the subtle dominance he tried to assert. All of it became clear. Later, at the office, I noticed the first real mistakes. She sent an email intended for him to the wrong address, one I had access to. It was brief, polite, yet the subtext was undeniable. I memorized every word, every implication. By mid-afternoon, her usual confidence began to crumble. Her interactions became nervous, awkward. She bumped into colleagues, stumbled over words, mismanaged small tasks she usually executed flawlessly. Each micro-error was a breadcrumb leading directly to the truth. At home, I prepared carefully. Dinner was normal, polite, but controlled. Her unease was palpable, like a subtle current under the surface. She tried to make conversation, but her words faltered. I responded calmly, with deliberate pauses, letting her feel the weight of silence. "You've changed," she said softly. "Something about you is different." "Yes," I said, "and so should you be." Her eyes widened. "Different how?" "I notice more," I replied, "and I act less." She laughed nervously, but the tremor in her fingers betrayed her. Every movement, every pause, every forced smile was a confirmation of my observations. She had no idea how much I knew. That evening, a small gathering was scheduled. Casual, friendly, but every guest was carefully chosen. Mutual colleagues, neighbors, and most importantly, the man. He arrived confident, unaware. He believed he had control over her, over their secrecy. But he was about to learn something crucial. Control is only an illusion. I watched them interact across the room. His arrogance was apparent. She leaned slightly toward him, trying to maintain composure, but the tension in her body betrayed awareness. She knew she had been exposed, though she didn't yet know to what extent. I raised my glass, not to confrontation, to clarity. "You should enjoy tonight," I whispered to her. "It's the last time things will feel uncertain." Her breath caught. "What are you—" "No explanations, only observation, only consequence." He noticed, really noticed, the change in atmosphere, the subtle tightening of my posture, the way I scanned the room, eyes calm, assessing every reaction. He could feel it, the shift. Later, I engineered a small moment, subtle but deliberate. She excused herself to the kitchen. I followed calmly, silently. "I saw your message," I said quietly, "the one you sent him." Her face paled. "Don't speak," I interrupted. "I only need to know this. Your trust has a cost. You've already paid, unknowingly." Her lips pressed tight. She swallowed, trying to mask panic, but it was too late. Every reaction was recorded, every slip catalogued. Internal monologue: observation has revealed the truth. Patience has created opportunity. She can no longer hide. Every gesture, every glance, every whispered word has been logged, stored, and interpreted. The game is entering its final act, and she is already trapped. Control has shifted. The consequences are inevitable. The following week, the man began to show cracks. He wanted reassurance, dominance, certainty. He demanded meetings, subtle assertions of control. But she was no longer in charge. He had miscalculated completely. I intercepted, not openly, not aggressively, subtly. A casual conversation overheard, a strategically placed email, a comment designed to sow doubt. His confidence faltered. "You think you're clever," I said to him one evening, voice low, almost casual, "but subtlety is not enough when observation is complete." He looked at me, startled. Recognition flashed in his eyes, and in that moment he understood. He had underestimated me. Back at home, the psychological pressure escalated. She could no longer pretend. Every movement, every word, every gesture was scrutinized, interpreted, judged. She began to unravel. "You're relentless," she said, tears forming. "I am precise," I replied, "and I am patient." Her trembling hands fell to her lap. She could not speak. She could not hide. During a workday, she made another mistake. A text sent to him accidentally appeared on the company chat. Casual, polite, but revealing. I noticed immediately. I did not act. Not yet. Instead, I let her see the error. The flicker of panic, the whispered apology. Every reaction confirmed my strategy. The web of evidence was growing. Everyone could see it if they looked closely. That night, I initiated the first open phase. We dined quietly. I placed a note on the table. Small, subtle, but unmistakable. She saw it immediately. Her pulse quickened. "Do you know?" she asked, voice trembling. "I know everything," I said, "and now, so will he." She froze. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. At the next gathering, I orchestrated the reveal, not loudly, not dramatically, subtle, precise, controlled. A message forwarded to the wrong recipient, a casual comment in conversation meant for the room but delivered carefully. Her eyes widened. His face changed. Recognition, panic, realization. She could no longer manipulate perception. She could no longer control narrative. The evidence was undeniable, and everyone was now aware, though carefully, indirectly. The psychological game had shifted into the open. She realized the extent of my patience, precision, and methodical observation. The web of deceit was visible, not everywhere, but everywhere that mattered. Internal monologue. The exposure is precise, controlled, every action deliberate. The web of deceit she constructed is now transparent to all key observers. Every reaction is catalogued. Every slip, every tremor, every whisper, every glance has been recorded. Patience yields victory. Observation yields control. And the final act approaches. At home, she could not sleep. Every corner of the house reminded her of the control she had lost. Every glance toward me revealed the knowledge she carried, that the game was over, that the patient observer had won. Her letters became frantic, her gestures careless. The man's confidence crumbled. She realized she had overplayed her hand, and I had been waiting, quietly, precisely, for this moment. The final phase, the act of confrontation, the unraveling of her secret, the first hints of public revelation, was now inevitable. The game had shifted completely. She had lost. I had waited, and I would act with complete control, in perfect timing. Part 7. The collapse begins. By the time she realized she was no longer hiding anything, it was already too late. The mistake people make about exposure is thinking it arrives like a scream, a confrontation, a door slammed, a voice raised. In reality, Exposure arrives quietly, like a room that suddenly feels colder, like a conversation that stops making sense halfway through a sentence. She woke up before the alarm that morning, her eyes open to the ceiling, unfocused, heart already racing. She didn't need to check her phone to know there were messages waiting. She could feel them, the pressure of unfinished conversations, the weight of expectations she could no longer manage. Beside her, I remained still, awake, listening. Her breathing was shallow, controlled, practiced. She was already rehearsing explanations in her head, not for me, for herself. She reached for her phone carefully, as if sound itself could betray her. The screen lit her face in pale blue. I didn't move. She read, paused, scrolled back. Her thumb hesitated. I could see it without turning my head. The shift, the micro-reaction, the tightening of her jaw. Whatever he had written wasn't reassurance. It wasn't patience. It was pressure. She slid out of bed and went to the bathroom, closing the door softly, too softly. The sound of the lock turning was deliberate, defensive. I waited exactly 30 seconds before getting up, not because I needed to, because timing matters. In the kitchen, I made coffee the same way I always did. Same mug, same routine. Consistency is unsettling when someone expects chaos. She emerged dressed for work, hair pulled back tighter than usual. Her eyes avoided mine. "Morning," she said. "Morning," I replied. Silence followed, thick, deliberate. She poured herself coffee she wouldn't finish. "You're up early," she said, trying to sound casual. "I didn't sleep much," I said. Her fingers tightened around the mug. "Work?" she asked. "No," I said. "Clarity." She looked up. "For some reason," I continued, "clarity arrives right before everything collapses." She opened her mouth, closed it, took a sip. "I don't know what you mean," she said. I smiled, not warmly, not cruelly, precisely. That makes one of us. At the office, the atmosphere had shifted again. It always does before a fall. People hadn't been told anything explicitly. That wasn't necessary. Humans are exceptionally good at sensing instability, a tone that's off, a hesitation in conversation, an interaction that feels unfinished. She walked through the floor with a practiced smile, greeting people by name, maintaining posture. But her timing was off. She responded too quickly to some questions, too slowly to others. He was already there. I watched from a distance, from behind glass, from reflection. He leaned against a desk that wasn't his, relaxed posture, forced confidence, the kind that overcompensates. When he saw her, his face lit up for half a second too long. She didn't return the expression. That was new. Later, I passed him in the hallway. "Busy day?" I asked. He blinked. "Always?" "Funny," I said. "Some people get nervous when things are about to slow down." He laughed, too quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I rarely do," I said, "until I know everything." I didn't wait for his response. The first real crack appeared that afternoon. A meeting, routine, 10 people around a table, familiar agenda. She was supposed to present. She always presented flawlessly. Today, she stumbled. Not dramatically, not enough for anyone to call it out, but enough. She lost her place mid-sentence, recovered, skipped a slide, corrected herself too quickly. Her voice wavered just enough to register subconsciously. I watched faces around the table, one raised eyebrow, one exchanged glance, one quiet note scribbled. After the meeting, she avoided eye contact. Later, I received a forwarded email, not from her, from him. It was short, sharp, impatient. You said things were under control. I'm starting to think they're not. We need to talk tonight. I didn't respond. I archived it. Control is not about reacting. It's about deciding when silence speaks louder. At home that evening, she tried something new. Honesty, or at least the performance of it. She set the table carefully, cooked a meal she knew I liked, opened a bottle of wine without asking. She waited until we were seated. "There's something I want to talk about," she said. I cut my food slowly. "Go on." She hesitated. The words didn't come. They never do when lies have lived too long. "I feel like we've been distant," she said. "Yes. I think we should try to reconnect." I looked up. "And what does reconnection look like to you?" Her hands trembled slightly. She hid them under the table. "More time together, less work, less distractions." "Distractions?" I repeated. "Yes." "Would you like to name them?" Her eyes flickered. "No," she said softly. "I don't think that would help." "I disagree," I said. "Naming things is how we stop pretending they don't exist." She swallowed. "I'm trying," she said. "Doesn't that count?" "For something," I said. "Just not for redemption." Tears formed, but didn't fall. She was still holding on to control. Barely. "I don't know what you want from me," she whispered. I leaned back. "I want you to feel exactly what you created," I said, without me having to explain it. That night, she didn't sleep. Neither did he. His messages escalated. Shorter, more aggressive, less careful. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? You promised me." Promises are dangerous things. They imply belief in permanence. I watched her read each message and delete it. Read and delete. Over and over. She finally broke. "I can't do this anymore," she said, pacing the living room. "Which part?" I asked. "All of it," she said. "The pressure, the lies, the fear." I nodded. "That's the cost," I said. "Of what?" "Of choosing excitement over integrity." She stopped pacing. "You planned this," she said suddenly. I met her eyes. "No," I said. "I prepared for it." There is a difference. The collapse accelerated quickly after that. He showed up unannounced at work. Bad decision. Desperation makes people visible. Someone saw him. Someone asked questions. Someone connected dots that had been carefully ignored. She was called into a meeting she hadn't scheduled. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. When she came home, her face was empty. No panic left. Just exhaustion. "They know," she said. "Some of them," I replied. "What are you going to do?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm going to finish what you started," I said. She sat down slowly. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said. "That's the most common lie," I said, "and the least relevant." He called me that night, directly. No masks left. "We need to talk," he said. "Yes," I replied. "We do?" "Not like this," he said. "Not with everything blowing up. You should have thought of that earlier." "She said you didn't know," he said. I smiled. "She underestimated me," I said. "You believed her." Silence. "You're going to destroy her," he said. "No," I said. "I'm letting her be seen." "That's worse," he said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. I hung up and looked at her. She was watching me. "What did he say?" she asked. I stood. "He finally understands the rules," I said. "And what are the rules?" she asked. I walked past her toward the door. "The truth always arrives," I said, "and it never asks permission." She didn't follow. She knew better now. The collapse had begun, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. Part 8. When silence turns public. The strangest part of public collapse is how polite it looks. No shouting, no accusations shouted across rooms, no dramatic exits. Just doors that stop opening, names that stop being mentioned, invitations that quietly disappear. She noticed it first at work. Conversations would pause when she approached. Not abruptly, not obviously, just enough for her to feel it. People smiled, nodded, returned to their screens. Professional, clean, but the warmth was gone. She sat at her desk longer than usual that morning, staring at the same document without reading it. Her reflection in the darkened monitor looked unfamiliar, older, smaller. I watched all of it unfold from a distance. Not intervening is a form of power. Her phone vibrated, a calendar update, a meeting she hadn't requested. HR, neutral title, mandatory. She didn't look at me when she stood. "You knew this would happen," she said. "Yes," I replied. "Why didn't you stop it?" I folded my hands. Because stopping consequences only teaches people to repeat the behavior. She left without another word. The meeting lasted 23 minutes. I know because I timed it. When she returned, her shoulders were slumped, her movements slow. She sat down heavily, as if gravity had increased. "They're not firing me," she said quietly. "Not yet." "Of course not," I said. "They're observing." "What does that mean?" "It means you're no longer trusted," I said. "And trust, once removed, doesn't return quietly." She nodded. Acceptance had begun to replace denial. "They asked about him," she said. "Yes." "I didn't confirm anything." "You didn't need to," I said. "The absence of denial is enough." She closed her eyes. "I feel like I'm disappearing." "No," I said. "You're becoming accurate." He didn't handle it as well. Men who believe they are invisible rarely survive exposure with dignity. He sent emails he shouldn't have, made phone calls too late at night, left messages that sounded reasonable only to himself. Someone forwarded one of them, not maliciously, casually. It reached the wrong desk, then another, then someone who understood exactly what they were looking at. By the end of the week, he was called in as well. He didn't tell her. She found out through silence, through the absence of his confidence, through the sudden desperation in his voice when he finally called. "They know," he said. "Yes," she replied. "You told them?" "No." "Then how?" "They watched," she said, "like everyone else." There was a pause. "This is falling apart," he said. "It already fell," she replied. "You're just late to the sound." At home, the atmosphere shifted again. Not tense, final. We moved around each other carefully, like people sharing space after an evacuation. No arguments, no emotional negotiations left. One evening, she sat across from me at the table. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I considered the question longer than necessary. "No," I said. "Hatred requires emotional investment. I'm past that." "What are you then?" "Free," I said. Her eyes filled, not dramatically, quietly. "I ruined everything," she said. "Yes," I agreed. She waited for comfort that didn't come. "And you let me," she said. I leaned forward. "No," I said calmly. "I watched you." There is a difference people rarely understand until it's too late. The first public consequence arrived on a Thursday, a reassignment, a quiet one. No announcement, no explanation. Her responsibilities were reduced. Her influence narrowed. She read the email twice. "They're sidelining me," she said. "For now." "Why not just fire me?" "Because that would be clean," I said. "This is surgical." She laughed softly. A broken sound. "I used to think you were passive," she said. "That was useful," I replied. He tried one last time. A meeting request. Neutral subject line. Carefully worded. He still believed in negotiation. I accepted. We met in a public place. Bright. Neutral. Ordinary. The kind of environment where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. He arrived early, stood when he saw me, nervous energy poorly disguised as confidence. "This didn't have to go this far," he said. "It didn't," I agreed. "She told me you didn't care," he said. "That was your mistake," I replied, believing the person lying to both of us. He clenched his jaw. "What do you want?" he asked. "I already have it," I said. "Which is?" "The truth," I said. "And time." He frowned. "You're enjoying this." "No," I said. "I'm finishing it." He leaned in. "You think you won?" he said. I met his eyes. "No," I said quietly. I waited. That's when he understood. Waiting is not weakness. It's preparation. That night, she packed a small bag. Not leaving, just creating distance. The instinct of someone who feels the walls closing in. "I think I should stay somewhere else for a few days," she said. "Yes," I replied. She hesitated at the door. "Is there anything left to say?" she asked. I thought about it. "One thing," I said. She turned. "You never lost me because of him," I said. "You lost yourself before he ever arrived." She nodded slowly. Then she left. The house was quiet again. Not empty, clear. The exposure was complete. Not through confrontation, not through revenge scenes, not through shouting, through visibility. And visibility, once achieved, cannot be undone. The final phase was approaching, not collapse. Resolution. Part 9. The calm before the finish. The house was quieter than it had been in years, not peaceful, not safe, just still. She returned after 2 days. Her face had lost color. Her eyes carried the weight of sleepless nights and whispered fears. Her hands fidgeted with the bag strap, as if the mundane act might anchor her to reality. I was at the dining table reading a book, not pretending, not acting, simply observing. "You're home," I said. She nodded, unable to speak at first. Then, I needed to think. "And?" She placed the bag down carefully. Her movements were deliberate. She was measuring me, measuring herself, measuring the air. She began, then stopped. She glanced toward the window. "I feel exhausted." "Good," I said simply. She looked at me, confused. "Good?" "Yes," I said. "Exhaustion is honesty. It shows that your decisions have consequences. It shows reality." Her hands fell to her lap. She didn't speak again. Work resumed as it had before, but subtly. She walked through her office like a ghost. People acknowledged her, but with distant politeness. She had lost her invisible authority. The man who once thought himself untouchable was sidelined professionally, quiet, unsure, forced to tread carefully. I observed quietly. Each slip, each hesitation, each anxious glance from her or him confirmed the strategy. There was no triumph in shouting, no spectacle in humiliation, only clarity, only consequence. At home, we had long conversations again, not about feelings, not about apologies, about reality, about choices, about responsibility. "You need to understand," I said one evening, "this isn't about hate or revenge. It's about exposure, observation, consequences." She looked at me, pale, taut. "And I understand?" "Yes, and you feel it too." She nodded silently. Internal monologue. Control has returned to where it belongs. Patience has borne fruit. Observation has revealed all. The collapse, subtle, methodical, precise, has completed. She knows. He knows. Everyone knows what is essential, and now the final phase of resolution can begin. I invited a small group of mutual acquaintances for dinner, not to humiliate, not to expose, but to cement perception. She walked in, confident only in her normal exterior. I raised my glass subtly, a gesture for the observant, not loud, not dramatic, but clear. Her colleagues smiled politely. The man tried to act casual, failed. "Enjoy the evening?" I whispered. She caught the meaning instantly. At home later, she tried to speak. No, I said. You don't need to explain. You only need to acknowledge what's happened and accept it. Her hands tightened around the glass she held. I don't know how to face him or anyone. You don't need to face anyone, I said. You need to face yourself. And that is enough. She exhaled, trembled slightly, then sank into the chair. The man finally attempted direct contact. I arranged a conversation. Neutral place, bright daylight, public, ordinary. He approached cautiously, nervous, aware. I let him. "You've controlled everything," he said. "Observed everything," I corrected. He hesitated. She didn't tell you?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "She revealed herself." He looked at me, realization striking. "You knew everything?" "Yes." The room went silent. No spectacle, no yelling, no threats, just understanding. "You're dangerous," he said finally. "Not dangerous," I replied. "Patient." Internal monologue. This is the culmination. Calm, controlled. I did not seek vengeance for the sake of drama. I orchestrated consequence, visibility, reality, precision, every movement measured, every slip recorded, every reaction observed. The collapse is complete. Control is restored. The final act approaches. Back at home, she finally asked the only question that mattered. "Will it ever be the same?" I smiled faintly. "Not the same. Better, clearer, honest. And that is enough." Her hands rested on the table, palms down, still trembling, accepting. The long game was finished, not with noise, not with spectacle, but with silence, observation, and precision. Part 10. The finale. The house felt alive in its own quiet way, not with laughter, not with argument, not with tension, just the steady pulse of inevitability. She moved through the rooms cautiously, each step deliberate. She knew the rhythm now, she understood the space, but she also knew she no longer controlled it. I sat at the table reviewing documents, legal papers, work schedules, notes from meetings. Everything aligned perfectly. Control was meticulous. Patience had been precise. Observation was complete. She approached cautiously. "Are you done?" she asked. I looked up. "Yes," I said. "For real?" "For real," I repeated, calm. "This is over. The consequences have landed. The truth is visible. The web is complete. The mistakes are public. And the final phase has arrived." She swallowed, slowly. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," I replied. "Silence is honest. It is acknowledgement, and that is sufficient." At work, the shift was undeniable. Colleagues interacted with her politely, cautiously. The man who once acted untouchable avoided eye contact entirely, maneuvering around office spaces as if every step might trigger observation. He tried to speak to her privately once. I intercepted, Not overtly, not forcefully. Just a subtle presence, a glance, a posture, enough to unsettle him completely. Later, he emailed. Short, desperate. I let it sit in the inbox. The timing would be perfect. That night, she tried to talk again. I can't believe this ended like this, she whispered. Not how I imagined it. Not how it ended, I corrected. But how it should have, I added. Her eyes filled with tears. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady streams of acknowledgement. You were patient, she said. And precise, she added softly. Yes, I replied, calm. And that is what matters. Internal monologue. Control has been restored. Observation has completed its work. Every slip, every misjudgment, every hidden meeting, every lie has been cataloged and addressed. Consequences have been delivered. The psychological architecture of deception has collapsed, precisely as intended. Silence, patience, precision. These are the instruments of finality. The game is over, and the outcome is exact. The following week, small confirmations arrived. Workplace alignments, professional adjustments, reputation shifts. Not dramatic, not gossipy. Just a subtle, pervasive, undeniable realignment. She noticed it. He noticed it. Everyone noticed it, if they paid attention. At home, I allowed conversation again, but not about love, not about forgiveness, about reality, about truth, about accountability. You will leave, she said finally. I know, I said. And then what? Then I live in the world with clarity, I said. Then I move forward without deception, without manipulation, without masks. I act with precision. You will act as you must, and the world adjusts accordingly. She nodded. Acceptance had replaced panic. Awareness had replaced denial. The man attempted a final meeting. Neutral location, bright daylight, open space, public, ordinary. He arrived tense, desperate. I didn't move, didn't speak. He approached. He tried negotiation. He tried reassurance. I never wanted it to come to this, he said. It came to this, I replied, calm. Because reality is not negotiable, truth is not optional, and deception has its cost. He faltered. He realized finally that the game was over. That control had been exact, patient, deliberate. He understood he had been observed, documented, and outmaneuvered from the first misstep. At home, she finally spoke to me alone. I see everything now, she said. Yes, I replied. You orchestrated it all, she whispered. I observed, I said. I waited. I acted precisely. Her lips pressed together. Silence fell. The quiet was no longer tension. It was acknowledgement, completion, closure. Internal monologue. The final act is complete. Every misstep has been addressed. Every deception has been exposed. The world aligns with the truth I observed. She has acknowledged it. He has understood it. Control is restored. Precision has prevailed. Patience has been rewarded. The game is finished. The last evening arrived. We dined quietly. No accusations, no anger, no tears, only calm acknowledgement. She moved through the space with careful steps. I observed, not to punish, not to assert, simply to confirm. The final note had been struck. The web was intact. The consequences were perfect. She finally spoke one last time. Will this matter? Yes, I said, because truth always matters, observation always matters, precision always matters, and patience always wins. The house returned to its quiet rhythm. The collapse had been methodical, the control restored the game completed.